Welcome back. The Ministry of Mines and Energy has introduced weighted fuel transportation rates to replace the existing rail rates for transporting fuel between Walvis Bay and the inland fuel pricing depots. To discuss this matter in more detail, we are now joined by Abednego Ekandjo, the Chief Petroleum Economist at the Ministry of Mines and Energy. Mr. Ekandjo, very good morning, and thank you so much for making time to join us.
Yeah, morning, Sen. Great having.
Awesome. Let's start off with breaking it down for us. We know that the fuel is offloaded at coastal terminals in Walvis Bay. From there, how is it distributed, across the country? And perhaps maybe just touch on the pricing, because usually when we hear of the price changes in Walvis Bay, I think they pay a lower rate compared to us in the inland. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, thank you once again for having the ministry. So what happens is once the fuel is offloaded from the vessels that bring fuel to Namibia, that fuel has to be distributed countrywide. So there are actually two types of transportation modes that we use. We can either use Trans-Namib, that's rail, and we can also use the road, using trucks or oil tankers. So the other option is also to use a pipeline. But currently in Namibia, we do not have pipelines between Walvis Bay and the other locations in the country. So in terms of pricing, Walvis Bay has the lowest price in the country because that's where the fuel lands when it comes into the country from the international market. It lands in Walvis Bay. So the Walvis Bay price does not have the cost of transportation added on top of it. So prices in places like Windhoek, for example, you either have to add the rail rate or the cost of transporting by road. That's why there's a difference in those prices.
Say now I'm traveling to, let's say, Katima Mulilo, for example, which is quite a distance from Walvis Bay. The pump price, is it the same as for somebody who is in Windhoek, or do they pay a much more higher price as well, or how do you make it up?
Yeah, so the way the pricing model works is a person in Katima will pay the same price as the person living in Grootfontein. So that's because the cost of transporting the fuel from Grootfontein to Katima is subsidized by the government through the National Energy Fund. Because it's the policy of government to say that people that live far away from the port of Walvis Bay do not have to pay more for fuel. So government steps in to subsidize the cost of transporting fuel from the nearest depot. So the nearest depot to the town of Katima Mulilo is Grootfontein. That's why these people are paying the same price as Grootfontein.
So we spoke about in the intro about the ministry introducing weighted fuel transportation rates. Very mouthful there. Explain to us what exactly it is and how these rates are determined.
Yeah, so these rates is simple. We have talked of different transportation modes of moving fuel. There is the rail and there is the road. So the cost of operating a locomotive or operating a train and the cost of operating a truck or an oil tanker, these are two different costs. So you will probably find that the cost of operating an oil tanker or a truck is probably 30 Namibian dollars per liter, while the cost of operating a locomotive or a train is probably 20 Namibian dollars per liter, as an example. So you now have to combine these two costs using the volumes that are transported by each type of mode to come up with the weighted average. So this is what we are referring to as the weighted fuel transportation rates.
All right. So basically this news or this development, what does it mean for myself and everyone else who's watching this as a consumer? Is it good news for us, or is it just another day?
Yeah, it's actually good news because at the end of the day, government wants the whole country to have fuel in it. And the way the fuel pricing model works, it works on what we call a cost recovery model. So if these suppliers of fuel, the likes of TransNamib and the operators of these oil tankers, the trucks, if they are unable to recover the costs of doing business, then we might end up with a situation where we don't have fuel in some places because the supplier cannot recover the cost of supplying fuel. So government always does these reviews to ensure that suppliers are able to recover the cost of supplying fuel.
A thorn in the flesh of government has been the Ngungula situation where people are trading in illegal fuel, and some people defend and say, well, what can I do? They are cheaper, and government must just bring down the cost of fuel because that is what I can afford right now. But if we were to look at the bigger picture, how much harm is it doing if I, instead of going to a formal certified service station, knowing that I'm getting a 95 or knowing I'm getting proper diesel, what am I doing to the economy in the larger scheme of things?
Yeah, I mean, this illegal fuel does not only affect Namibia, but it also affects Angola, where the fuel is coming from. Because this Angolan fuel is subsidized by the Angolan government for the Angolan people. But however, for Namibia, it's firstly a loss of revenue for government because there are some taxes there, such as the NEF levy, your road user charges, MVA levy, etc., that are put on top of the fuel price as a revenue for government. But also in the bigger scheme of things, you find Namibians wanting to drive on nice roads. When they're involved in accidents, they want the NVA to step in and assist emergencies. So, but if you are not contributing to these funds, how will the RFA be able to maintain roads if you are choosing to fill up your car with Ngungula fuel? So these are some of the intricacies that Ngungula has on the market.
And if you may, just briefly, since we're touching a bit on Angola and the fact that they produce their own fuel, there are those who argue that, well, why can't we just get fuel from Angola? I mean, why do we have to transport our fuel from Iran, the Middle East, while we have a neighbor right on top of us up north who produces their own oil? Please just break that down for us, and maybe it's not as simple as it looks.
I think what people need to understand is Angola produces crude oil, and there's a difference between crude oil and refined petroleum products. So when we talk of diesel, petrol, those are refined petroleum products. However, crude oil is not refined. And there has been a refinery in Angola, the Lobito refinery, which produces around 20% of Angola's needs. So that old refinery in Angola, it cannot even meet Angola's own needs. That's why we have to go outside of Africa to get refined petroleum products. So they are currently building some new refineries in Angola. So hopefully, if those new refineries come on stream, we might be able to take fuel from there.
I'm assuming building refineries are very expensive because Nigeria, a country that has been producing oil for over 50 years, only recently through the billionaire Dangote, yes, thank you, had built up set up now a privately owned refinery. Is it so difficult in terms of like the cost and financing this thing? Because usually, people would just look at it and say, well, why don't we just build a refinery and, obviously things maybe will be cheaper going forward. That's how some people reason.
Yeah, very, very expensive to build a refinery. Last time we checked, around $1 billion US for you to put up a modern refinery. So, and you need technical expertise, a lot of expertise to run, because it's heavy industry. So it's not an easy thing to finance and also to run. So these are some of the issues.
Lastly, Namibia is predicted to be also one of to join the exclusive club of oil-producing countries. Maybe not now, but in the next 10, 15 years perhaps. But how do you envision that development impacting in the energy sector, and as far as, you know, oil is concerned?
Yeah, I mean, it will be a huge development for Namibia if we start producing our own crude oil. In terms of revenue that we expect to come to the government, in terms of the value chain, job creation for Namibians, etc. So we are expecting a very big impact from these oil productions.
All right, awesome. Abednego, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
And all the best with you and the rest of the team in doing what you do. Highly appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, and that was the Chief Petroleum Economist from the Ministry of Mines and Energy, Abednego Ekandjo, talking to us about the newly introduced weighted fuel transportation rates, and also just breaking down the whole, you know, jargon in as far as, you know, oil and fuel is concerned. I highly appreciate that.